Hello everyone, I am Bachaspati Dhaneshwari Sharma. I am an English teacher of class 9 and 10. Welcome to English grammar class. Today we are going to discuss a very important topic, that is punctuation. Punctuation is something which we all use while writing, but due to lack of proper knowledge on where and how to use them, most of us restrict the use of punctuation to full stops, commas, and capital letter. So today we are going to discuss the different punctuation marks and where and how to use them. So before we discuss, it is mandatory for us to know what is a punctuation. So punctuation are symbols that are used in written language. It helps us to convey different shades of meaning. When we speak, we can convey different shades of meaning by using tone variation or pauses, but it is not so in written language. Like in written language, in order to convey different shades of meaning, we have to take the help of punctuation marks. So now let's proceed our discussion. So let me first of all introduce you to the list of punctuation marks that we are going to discuss today. The first important punctuation is capital letters. Then we have the terminal punctuations, which consist of the full stop, the mark of exclamation, and the mark of interrogation. Then we have pauses, which consist comma, semicolon, and colon. Then we have inverted commas. Then the hyphen, the dash, the apostrophe, etc. So these are the punctuation marks that we will be discussing in today's class. Let's start our discussion with the capital letter. The capital letters are used in the first letter of the first word of each and every sentence. For example, let us take these two sentences. We should learn how to swim. It is a good exercise. In these two sentences, we and it are the beginning words. So since they are the beginning words of these two sentences, they should begin with capital letters. Next, we have proper nouns, proper adjectives, titles, and posts. So when we use this kind of proper nouns, proper adjectives, titles, and posts, we have to begin them with a capital letter. Let me clarify it with the help of an example. For example, the proper noun India, we have to start this with the capital letter I. Then in the proper adjective Indian, it is a proper adjective because it is derived from the proper noun India. So we have to begin Indian with the capital letter I. Then in titles such as Lord, Knights, etc., we have to begin them with capital letter. Then in jobs or professions such as doctor, engineer, professor, we have to begin all of this with the capital letter. Then we also generally use capital letters in the beginning of every line of poetry. For example, in this extract of poem from Success is Counted Sweetest, the letters S, B, T, and R, they all begins with capital letters. Then the next use of capital letter is to write the pronoun I. For example, let us take this sentence. When I entered the classroom, he was singing. Here I is used as a pronoun. So we have to use the capital letter I. Then the next use of capital letter is for all nouns and pronouns referring to God. For example, in this sentence, oh God, help us. We have to begin God with the capital letter G because it stands for the Almighty God. So we have to begin this with the capital letter. Now let's discuss the terminal punctuation. So as we have already discussed, there are three kinds of terminal punctuations. They are the full stop, the mark of exclamation, and the interrogative mark. So first, let's start with the full stop. So full stop is used at the end of assertive sentence and imperative sentence. So what do you mean by this assertive sentence? Assertive sentence are those sentences that states or deny facts. For example, I like to play. I don't like to play. These are assertive sentences. The first one is an affirmative statement and the second one is a negative statement. So we have to put the punctuation mark full stop to indicate that we have completed writing the sentence. Then in imperative sentence means sentence that indicates command, request, proposal, or suggestion. In the imperative sentence, close the door, we have to use the punctuation mark full stop. So now let's move on to another use of full stop, that is after abbreviations and initials. For example, BC. BC is an abbreviated form of before Christ. So we have to use full stop after B and after C. Then when we use the initials in a shortened form, like for example, instead of writing Mr., if we use the shortened form MR, then we have to put a full stop after this. But there are some writers who do not put this full stop if the terminal letters of the full word and abbreviated word are the same. So these are some of the uses of full stop. So now let's proceed our discussion on interrogation mark. So interrogation mark, it is used at the end of every interrogative sentences, like for example, what is your name, who are you, etc. Then now let's move on our discussion to mark of exclamation. So there are three uses of the exclamation mark. The first one is after interjection. So we need to know what is an interjection. Interjections are words that expresses sudden feeling of mind, such as alas, bravo, hooray, etc. So after these words, we have to put the exclamation mark. Then we have to use this mark of exclamation after exclamatory sentences. So what is an exclamatory sentence? Exclamatory sentences are those sentences that express sudden feeling or strong emotions. Like for example, in the sentence, what a beautiful sight. It expresses a very strong emotion or a sudden feeling of the mind. So we have to use the exclamatory mark. Then last but not the least, we have to use the exclamation mark in optative sentence. So what do you mean by optative sentence? Optative sentences are those sentences that convey wish or prayers. Like for example, may God bless you. This is an optative sentence. So we have to put the punctuation mark exclamation, the mark of exclamation after this optative sentence. So we have finished our discussion on terminal punctuations. So now let's start our discussion about pauses. So there are three punctuation marks that indicate pauses. They are comma, semicolon, and colon. Let's first discuss about the comma. Comma is the shortest pause out of all these three pauses. And the use of comma are as follows. Number one is, it is used to separate three or more words that belong to the same parts of speech. Let us take the help of an example. Houseflies, mosquitoes, and cockroaches are common indoor pests. So these houseflies, mosquitoes, and cockroaches, they are all nouns. And so this means that they belong to the same parts of speech. So we have to divide these houseflies and mosquitoes with a comma. And since there is a conjunction and between mosquitoes and cockroaches, we may or may not put a comma in between them. But after houseflies, we have to put the comma in order to separate it from the word mosquitoes. Then let us take up another example. He is brave, strong, and honest. Brave, strong, and honest belong to the same parts of speech, means they are all adjectives. So we have to separate them by using a comma. Then the next use of comma is to indicate noun in apposition. So first of all, let me tell you what is noun in apposition. So noun in apposition is nothing but using two nouns consecutively with each other, and they should indicate to the same person or thing. Let us take an example. John Milton, the poet, became completely blind at the age of 43. So John Milton and the poet, it refers to the same person, and both of them are nouns. So we have to mark the phrase the poet with a comma. Then comma is also used after vocatives. So what is the vocatives? Vocatives refers to direct address. For example, in this sentence, Tomba, why are you late? We have to put a comma after Tomba because we are using a direct address. We are calling Tomba directly. We are taking his name. It is like it is in the vocative case. So we have to use the punctuation mark comma after the vocative case. Then comma is also used to mark off absolute construction. So let me tell you what is an absolute construction. Absolute construction are phrases that expresses cause, time, or circumstances of an action. It is known as an absolute phrase because it has the capacity to modify the whole meaning of the main clause. Let me clarify this with the help of an example. Being tired, he went to sleep. So the absolute phrase being tired, it tells us why he went to sleep. So this is an example of absolute phrase. So let me take the help of another example. Her mother being ill, she had to look after the family. So the main clause is she had to look after the family. But from the absolute phrase, her mother being ill, we come to know why she is looking after the family. So this is an example of absolute construction. So we need to use a comma after the absolute construction. Then we have to use comma after non-defining phrase. So first of all, let me tell you what is a non-defining phrase. Non-defining phrase just gives more information about someone or something. Even if we remove it from the sentence, there will be no change in the meaning. It just gives us some extra information. So for example, my uncle who lives in Delhi has 2 daughters. So if I remove the non-defining phrase who lives in Delhi, the sentence will become my uncle has 2 daughters. So does this brings any change to the meaning of this sentence? No, it doesn't bring any change to the meaning of the sentence. It only gives us some extra information about my uncle. So this is known as non-defining phrase. So we have to separate this non-defining phrase with the punctuation mark, comma. Then the next use of comma is to separate words, phrases, and clauses inserted in the body of a text. For example, Thoibi is after all a talented singer. So this phrase after all has been inserted in the body of this sentence. So we have to mark it off with the punctuation mark, comma. Then the next use of comma is it is also used to avoid a repetition of a verb. For example, they elected Shyam as president, Raghu as the secretary. So instead of repeating the word elected again and again, we can just use a comma in order to avoid the repetition of the verb elected. Then the next use of comma is to separate short coordinate clause. So what is a short coordinate clause? So what exactly is a coordinate clause? Coordinate clause are independent clause that expresses complete thought. For example, in this sentence, Ram danced, Anil sang, and Uttam played the music. Ram danced is an independent clause because it expresses a complete thought. Likewise, Anil sang, Uttam played the music are also independent clause, means they are coordinate clause. So in order to separate them, we have to use the punctuation mark, comma. Then comma is also used after salutations and complimentary endings in letters. For example, when we do letter writing, we have to first begin it with the salutation. Like for example, dear uncle. So we have to put the punctuation, comma, after uncle. Then after complimentary endings such as yours faithfully, yours sincerely, we have to put the punctuation mark, comma. Then last but not the least, we have to use the punctuation mark, comma in order to separate date and year. Like for example, August 27, 2015. In order to separate the date and the year, we have to use the punctuation mark, comma. So that's it for the use of the punctuation mark, comma. Now let's move on our discussion to semicolon. Semicolon is a longer pause compared to comma. So the first use of semicolon is to separate 2 or more independent clauses, that is 2 or more compound sentences when they are connected by certain conjunctions expressing contrast or inference. For example, in the sentence, I have read the lesson, however, I can't understand. There is a semicolon just before the contrasting conjunction, however. So this is how we use the semicolon. Then the next use of semicolon is to separate sentences that are closely related to each other. Like if we can even use a full stop in between, but if we use a full stop, then it will mark a complete break between these 2 sentences. So in order to emphasize their relatedness, we can use the semicolon. For example, in this sentence, I have to get ready now. I don't want to be late. These two sentences are related. So if we put a full stop, then it will mark a complete break. So we can use a semicolon instead of a full stop. Then next we will move on to colon. Colon is a longer pause than semicolon. In fact, this is the longest pause out of these three punctuation marks, means comma, colon, and semicolon. Colon is the longest pause. And we use colon to introduce a quotation. For example, William Shakespeare said, "Brevity is the soul of wit." So before we begin the quotation, we can introduce it with the help of a colon. Then colon can also be used to introduce a list of items. Like for example, some of the important rivers of Manipur are the Imphal River, the Barak River, the Nambul River, etc. So before we begin the list of the rivers, we can use the punctuation mark colon. Now let's discuss about inverted commas. So inverted commas, they are used to indicate direct quotation. For example, let us look at this sentence. He said, "What a beautiful flower." So in order to indicate that this is a direct statement, we have to use the inverted comma. Then inverted comma can also be used to mark out special names. Like for example, the Hindu is a national newspaper. So the Hindu is a special name in this sentence. So we can mark it out with the help of an inverted comma. Then the next punctuation mark is hyphen. So the first use of hyphen is to join compound words. For example, mother-in-law. Mother-in-law consists of three words. It comprises of three different words. So we have to separate them with the help of a hyphen in between. Then while writing compound numbers, starting from 21 to 99, we have to put a hyphen in between if we are going to write them in words. Like for example, 24. If we have to write the figure 24 in words, we have to put a hyphen between 20 and 4. Then the next use of hyphen is when prefixes are added before proper nouns. Like for example, Anglo-Indian and non-European. Indian and European are proper noun. So when we add the prefix Anglo and non respectively, we have to separate them with a hyphen. Then the next punctuation mark is dash. It is used to draw a conclusion of what we have written. Like for example, I have lost my family, my health, my wealth. Dash. My life is meaningless. So for all the above things that I have written, the final conclusion is my life is meaningless. So before coming to a conclusion, we can use the punctuation mark dash. Then last but not the least, we have the apostrophe. So apostrophe is also a punctuation mark, and the uses of apostrophe are as under. Number one is to form possessive case of nouns. For example, in this sentence, Jenny's shawl is expensive. This apostrophe indicates that the shawl belongs to Jenny. Then the second use of apostrophe is to make plurals of letters or figures, as in fives, A's. For example, when we were kids, our teacher used to ask to circle the fives or the A's. So in order to form the plurals of these figures or letters, we can use the apostrophe. Then the third use of apostrophe is to indicate omission of a letter. For example, I have. Instead of writing I have, we can write it in the shortened form, that is I have. So the apostrophe marks the missing letter H and A. Then instead of writing it is, we can write its with the help of an apostrophe. So we have come to the end of the discussion on punctuation marks. Use them in order to make your writing more refined and in order to convey the meanings properly. So I hope you have understood the different punctuation marks, and I hope that you would implement them in your writings. So that's all for today. Thank you.